Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, I want to share my thoughts on PvP in Final Fantasy XIV. With the new stuff coming in patch 6.1, a lot of people have just asked me, do I think it's going to help? Is PvP just going to be dead in a month? And so while I've said things piecemeal about what they're doing with the new mode and how I think it'll help, I figured I'd make a standalone video where I kind of talk about my overall thoughts on PvP pre 6.1. And then I can talk a little bit more specifically about how I think the 6.1 changes will help and other things that the developers could probably still do to boost interest in PvP in Final Fantasy XIV. Now, normally I do these kind of videos with a script, but when it comes to opinion pieces, I put a few thoughts together on like a sheet of paper or on like a document, and then I just kind of rattle them off. So this is going to be kind of rambly. I'm probably going to jump around a little bit in terms of my points, but I just want to speak from the heart about the topic like this, so it'll probably be a long one. So first and foremost, PvP in Final Fantasy XIV has always been an uphill battle. I mean, you got to remember when A Realm Reborn was releasing, it didn't even have PvP because they were just trying to make the game not a failure with the remake. And that definitely was the most important thing to achieve. But then as time went on and they started to try to incorporate PvP, it just never felt like it was a fully fledged effort. Not only was there not really a lot of interest because the majority of Final Fantasy players are not inherently big PvP players, and that was kind of the community they were really pushing when A Realm Reborn first re-released, but it just never felt like they really had an idea of what to do. It always felt like they were just adding PvP to Final Fantasy XIV because that was something MMOs did. They had PvP, you know, they had arenas, they had battlegrounds, they had dueling. It's just all the basics of what PvP is in the games, but they never really seemed to capture the idea of what made those things fun, what kept people engaging in those things, even between like long stretches of content. And it's crazy to think that with all the reworks and all the changes and additions that they made to the mode, that up till now, they just never really got that essence. I mean, when they added PvP back in A Realm Reborn, you know, they added a 4v4 deathmatch, which, you know, should have worked, but they decided they needed these like PvP rankings and extra PvP actions on top of your PvE actions. And they needed that you needed gear with stats that was exclusive to PvP because that was the only way they were going to incentivize people to do it. But then you needed a certain rank to equip the stuff, and then they wanted materia for different resistances, but they didn't really tune the values. It was all over the place. It was a hodgepodge of ideas that just felt like they were like pulled little bit by little bit from other sources. Then when they started adding battlegrounds, you know, yeah, they had some decent modes: Secure, Slaughter, you know, some of which they've gotten rid of, Seal, Rock, Shatter, all of them beginning with S. But it seemed like they always wanted every player to not feel stressed about being in PvP without really making the player feel like they were contributing in PvP. Like, yeah, I get it. You want to make sure the barrier for entry is low. You want to make sure that a player hopping in isn't so stressed about not performing well because there's all these other players on the map. They can be overwhelmed. They can chalk it up to just bad numbers, or they have teammates to make up for your deficiencies. But that's just not the reality of those large-scale battles. It's the group with more people working together generally wins, and then if you lose constantly, you don't feel good just because you weren't probably the only problem. You feel like, okay, well, I just keep losing. I don't know if it's me, my team, or if the other teams are just really good. I have no idea. Then to top it off, they had this whole like grand company separation thing because other MMOs did that. I think realistically, they probably looked at WoW's Alliance and Horde PvP divisions and went, well, we need something like that. Let's do three-way battles. And the three-way battles are just a mess. Yeah. This is a lot of pent-up years of PvP frustrations with Final Fantasy XIV. All these half-baked ideas. And they just kept trying. They just kept doing different things. But these ideas never really left. There was always a problem with reward structure, with trying to make players not feel stressed, but making them feel inconsequential to the result of the battle. They really just wanted to stop harassment. They wanted to make sure PvP balance was separate from PvE balance, but they never really got that right either. It's just, it always felt like they just handed it to one guy and said, you know what, here, we'll have people make all the assets. You figure the rest of it out. And I can't even blame him. It's just, there's no love, no help, no anything. That's just how I felt for years with Final Fantasy XIV PvP. Even in its peak, even with Seal Rock, even with Feast, and even with the Garo event, which was really just an excuse to get people into PvP, there's just been so many issues with it. So, does that mean 6.1 will suddenly turn all of that around? Probably not, but I think it's worth mentioning the things that the 6.1 PvP changes probably will do. So first of all, the actual gameplay changes aren't as severe as they had made it sound initially when they first started talking about it. Originally, they were talking about how there was going to be no role requirements and everybody would be able to achieve a similar feel or a similar role in PvP itself, and that your limit breaks would really be the things that differentiated you. What it really ended up meaning is that there wasn't going to be so much onus on your healer specifically, which was a huge problem in all the PvP modes up till now. Good healers meant no way to actually win the match, or a stalemate that just dragged the match on to the maximum amount of time, and that was just boring because it was just a stalemate for such a long period. So by adding, this self-heal that you have, using only MP, that's the only MP action that actually is in the game for each player at this point, for each role, is that actual self-heal that you can do for about 30% of your max health, to give everyone this massive damage reduction. I think it's 90% damage reduction on a short cooldown, and to give people the elixir that they can use if they have 5 seconds outside of combat. It basically means that if you get jumped, you have tools to deal with it. It's not up to how quickly your healer reacts. There is an onus on how quickly you react, and then on top of that, it becomes an element to play around. If you're able to remove somebody's MP, or you're able to really pressure their defensive cooldowns, then all of a sudden now you've opened up that opportunity in order to actually land some kills and get through and meet the objectives. So they're putting a lot more power into individual players, which does indeed take stress off the healer. I do still think healers are going to make or break major PvP matches, especially in the higher competitive ranks, but not nearly as much as they did before, because players who can use their defensives properly while also making sure to do target selection properly will aid in relieving their healer stress by quite a bit. The bigger thing is that there's no role requirement, so you could end up on a team with 4 DPS and a healer and do just fine against, triple tank 1 DPS or 2 DPS or something like that. Both those teams are going to really come down to how well they execute on target selection, because their actual makeup will determine what their target selection will be. So you can have a lot more onus on it, but it is, again, not going to feel like it's entirely on your shoulders. So this is closer to that equilibrium they're always striving for, without feeling really hand-holdy, I suppose, which is something that a lot of hardcore PvPers aren't exactly looking for. So the first issue of balance, we need to actually get our hands on it, but this is definitely a step closer to taking the onus off of healers. The next thing we have is how long PvP takes to actually spend time in. Most PvP matches are either over so quick that the losing team is discouraged from even playing another match, or it drags on a draw the entire length of the game mode. And they've tried to just reduce the length of the game mode over and over again, but they keep making these game modes that are more conducive to longer games while also reducing the amount of time you have to play said game. So it ends up just usually meeting the max length, and it's just not really working out. So the big thing with this is the new mode they're adding, in particular, Crystal Conflict. So those matches are 5 minutes, and while yes, there is overtime, it's realistically just as if the winning team ever gets all of the defending team or all the losing team out of the range of the crystal, then they win. If the losing team is able to push back, then yeah, it could drag on a little longer because they're going to push it back towards the enemy base. So there is a chance for a comeback, but odds are overtime won't run more than a minute or two in most cases. So 5-minute match is something that you could realistically expect, which makes it easier to hop in and hop out of content without really feeling bored, like you're just wasting time sitting there. Oh, this is over, we might as well just wrap it up, and no, we're gonna have to wait 7 more minutes for this match to end, and then you don't even want to do it because then you got to sit in queue all this time. Yeah, a lot of repressed thoughts. So the match length being 5 minutes is a big thing, and also on top of that, the actual mode Crystal Conflict is a lot of good ideas all put into one place. So first of all, 5v5 I think is great. They have been far too beholden to the whole multiple of 4 style content for all of these years. 4, 8, 24, 72. Just go outside of the box a little bit. Allow us to do some 5-man content, some 10-man content. Make content for it. And I think for PvP, this is a good place to start, especially since there is no actual role requirement. Short queues, and everybody who's queuing in is going to get thrown into matches relatively quickly as long as there's at least 10 people queuing. And also it sets a precedent for the future. Maybe we do get a 10v10 mode at some point, or a 15v15 mode, or a 20v20 mode, or something like that, as opposed to these 24v24s or 24v24s v24s that are just an absolute mess. So really, really excited about that. On top of that, they're launching with 3 maps. I think you really need to do that when you're kind of hinging on the new PvP mode to really reinvigorate people. And having the different layouts and environmental hazards is a good way to shake things up when you're shoving a bunch of people all into a single mode. And I know, yes, you will still have your frontline roulettes, and yes, rival wings will be turned off until 6.2, but they need to make sure that this actual mode is the thing getting people in. On top of that, it's like the push mode from Overwatch 2 and Splatoon, even though I know a lot of people compare it to Payload from Overload and TF2. And that's actually good because people who don't play the game will see that mode playing out and they'll kind of just instantly get it. You know, it's such a popular type of mode, even if there's different variants of it in different games, that a player who doesn't do PvP but is kind of interested, seeing that, identifying it, and kind of immediately knowing what the rules are is exactly the kind of entry-level stuff you want for PvP. When a new player sees a Frontlines map, they think they understand it until they start playing a match, and then they see like nodes popping up over there, and ice that's, you know, small ices and big ices, and then there's 3 teams, and then you have towers, and you have giant robots, you have cerulean tanks, you have a train, you have all these weird rules and things set in place that are not immediately able to be identified by a player who doesn't already know it. This won't have that issue. So the mode itself, I'm thrilled. Even if the overall changes don't end up working out, this is something they need to kind of stick with, is all of these ideas, all of these executions, because they just can't do what they've been doing for all these years. Now, that being said, while I've had my various issues with PvP, them taking away words in the feast, or just the general changes to the way that PvP actually plays, I think for me the biggest thing has definitely been reward structure. You know, when they first added PvP, essentially you would buy a few things with wolf marks, and then you were done, because the only other thing to earn were achievement rewards, and those were usually like, what, 100 wins, 200 wins. And in Frontlines, I don't want to do hundreds of wins. I barely win enough as it is with these 3-way matches. Then when you do the 2-way matches, it's still kind of the same feeling. You know, I don't really want to grind out 100 or 200 wins in this mode where I just don't matter enough to like influence the win on that kind of level. So this was something they needed to tackle, I think, more than anything. And they're trying something that I think actually still needs a bit of time to get off the ground. So they're introducing this like battle pass-esque feature. And I know when I say that, people think they're going to have to buy a premium pass. You don't. There's no like additional charge or buying a premium pass. It's just that's the structure that it works on. You do any sort of PvP match, you get credit for the battle pass, you progress it, you automatically earn rewards. Win or lose, you still get to make some progress. And this is a good idea. This is something that, again, is very identifiable to people. It's very modern in terms of its reward structure, and it ensures that no matter what, you are actually progressing towards some kind of reward. Now, the rewards themselves in the first one, I think, are maybe a little too spread out. You know, it looks like they have like an emote, a couple of adventure plate customization options, the Nero glasses fashion item, and then a whole armor set. The whole armor set, definitely the peak of things they need to be adding. People love glam. And yes, fashion accessories are glam and adventure plates are glam. But having only 5 rewards across the first 25 levels and every single other level being these currencies, these like crystals, these trophies, I believe they're called, trophy crystals, that you can spend on old rewards, obviously that's not going to look too approachable right now because there are no old rewards. This is something that'll look better when we actually get into the second series in patch 6.2, and it actually buys them some time to figure out if this reward structure, this like 5 rewards across 25 levels and just everything else is crystals, if that even works. Yoshi P even expressed he wants to continue to improve upon rewards in the latest live letter and add new ones frequently. That's what needs to happen. I couldn't be more excited because the armor set looks cool, and I'm going to want to get to that, which means I'll get all the other rewards along the way. And then the next series, I want to do the same thing. But someone who starts in the second series is going to want to get maybe the Series 1 rewards and go back. So they've got the right idea. But there's one thing they kind of walked back on that I don't know if they really walked back on it or it just wasn't communicated properly. In a previous live letter, they said that they were going to allow us to buy old series rewards after those series had ended. And the idea was to reduce the fear of missing out, or FOMO, as most people know it. And they're kind of doing that apparently they're making it so that like it takes up to 2 series for rewards to disappear. So when Series 3 comes out, the Series 1 rewards will go away entirely. They won't be purchasable with trophy crystals, and obviously the series itself is passed, so you can't earn them from that. I think that, that's 8 months of time. That's plenty of time. People should not have a fear of missing out if they're given 8 months to earn something and they just decide not to do it. But I do think that that doesn't necessarily speak for years down the line, when, someone's on Series 16 and they're like, oh, those Series 1 rewards look really cool. They originally expressed that maybe they'd bring them back at some point, but they made it seem more like they would just always be there. So again, the communication kind of needs to improve in this regard, because we don't know if the series rewards will eventually be cycled back in the trophy crystal shop. I see other games with battle passes do it. I think it's a good idea, especially since they've already set up the currency, and they'll be looking at feedback for this anyway. So if enough people feel this way, they probably will go about doing that. That's at least something the dev team is really, really good at doing, is taking our feedback. Unless, of course, you're looking for Dark Knight Blood Weapon or Machinist. Let's not talk about that in this video. So definitely a better start to the reward structure. I think a more easy to read, simple to understand PvP mode that accommodates for more greater variety of playstyles and jobs in any given match without the role requirements in 5v5. And because it's not a large scale thing, the queues are likely to be relatively short. You can still use it to actually level jobs as well, which is something that I always tend to forget with PvP. And you'll still earn Wolf's Mark. So if there are PvP rewards you wanted from before that you can buy with Wolf Marks, then you'll be able to do that. On top of that, the Garo collaboration coming back is going to flood people into PvP, no matter what. A lot of people have been wanting that back to get the rewards. And on top of that, they're adding rewards for the jobs that were introduced between the last time it was around and now. So they are just blitzing everything, and this needs to work. It doesn't just need to be good, though. It needs to get people to stop telling everyone else who doesn't play the game, who asks about PvP, needs to get us to stop saying, PvP in 14, I wouldn't play it for that. That's the narrative they want to change. That's the narrative they need to tackle. Now, is there anything I hope they do going from 6.2 onward? Yeah. Again, I think they need to re-look at the battle pass and the frequency with which you get rewards on it. Again, only 5 rewards isn't too exciting, at least at this point. They might want to consider adding rewards that are exclusively bought with trophy crystals, and maybe they will do that, and we just don't know it yet. Because I think that, especially in Series 1, collecting them is going to kind of feel pointless. It'll just be a formality for the future, and, that's not necessarily bad, but it's also not very interesting. I also think they need to stop deleting old PvP stuff. I don't know why they're always in such a rush to just delete the old PvP stuff instead of adjusting it or fixing it or leaving it in, or just, I don't know, doing something with it. The fold didn't need to go away. You can have a 4v4 casual PvP deathmatch mode and just put it in roulettes, and then people can actually go participate in it. As long as you have decent rewards from PvP, you can have those kind of less popular modes in there. Every game has a less popular PvP mode. And then on top of that, they just delete maps. Astrologos came out and they're like, never mind, that's unbalanced. Let's delete it and only put this new one in and just pretend the old one didn't exist. All those assets, you spent months of people's time and money just to make this thing you're going to delete. Some of the old feast maps going away when they added the Crystal Tower map. It just really rubs me the wrong way that they just delete old PvP stuff. That isn't even necessarily bad. They just want to do something else that's, I guess, more streamlined and more direct. But please take those old assets and do something with them, or just please stop doing it going forward at the very least. Rival Wings, you say it's temporarily gone. I really hope when it comes back, it's rebalanced as like a 10v10 or a 15v15 mode, and the new gameplay changes have been all taken into account, and it's not a hodgepodge of just disaster. Please, when it comes back, let it be that way. And please let it come back, because, again, don't just be like, it's going away for a little bit. Oh, never mind, we're deleting it altogether. Please stop doing that. And one last thing, you need Wolfmark rewards still. I know the Garo collaboration is coming back. I know there's stuff there now. You still need Wolfmark rewards. I don't know what you want to make them, but either get rid of Wolfmarks altogether and move everything into trophy crystals, or or just add more Wolfmark rewards. You got to do one or the other, because you've already got all these different currencies in PvP just piling on top of each other, and it's going to be a mess at some point, especially if some of them just don't get updates. So, not that I'm too hopeful, because they tend to do this with other things, but that's my advice. I do also have some mild concerns about seasons. They're doing 2 seasons per PvP, per patch, 2 PvP seasons per patch. So 6.1 will have 2 different seasons of competitive. And I think that's because they want people to be participating in it frequently enough that if somebody wants to get into PvP, they don't have to wait too long to wait for a new season. And I think that's a good idea. We don't really know, again, how that's going to affect the rewards because the frequency is going to be so much higher. But on top of that, there is still the concern about actual queues for this. We don't really know what the new matchmaking system looks like. We only know how the risers and tier system will work. And the fact that you can never go down a tier, you can go down a riser, but you can never go down a tier, means that either A, they have a very in-depth MMR thing that's being programmed in. So if you're a bronze player with a really high MMR, you'll be matched against much higher players. But then again, that's only going to affect your MMR because you can only gain risers by winning. So you can't really gain like ELO. You can't gain like plus 18 as opposed to plus 12 if you're playing at a higher MMR. So I do have concerns about the lower ranks in the later weeks of each season kind of diminishing in popularity. But you know what? If they do a good enough job with this, that won't become a problem. But I suspect it'll probably become a problem because I think most people are going to be casually PvPing for the Garo stuff and not necessarily trying to get into the competitive scene. I hope people do, though, because I actually think that the Feast was a pretty fun, especially fun to watch competitive scene. And I think Crystal Conflict can be, too. So I'll be participating in the competitive season. I probably won't go too ham on it, but I will be participating. So hopefully that'll encourage some other people as well to give it a shot. Overall, I'm looking forward to it. I think a lot of good's going to happen. I just hope it lasts. There's not much else to say. Anyway, with that, I've rambled on for over 20 minutes at this point, so let's wrap things up. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned. We'll be doing all sorts of content for patch 6.1, PvP, PvE, ultimate guides, you name it, we got it. Anyway, until next time, y'all have a good one. Take care.